I'm gonna have a pretty busy weekend, not gonna lie. So, this video is gonna be one of the grab bag topics that dives into some thoughts that I wanted to get out there, but thoughts that I in general don't think are all too relevant at any particular time. It's just, hey, if this is interesting, we can listen to it. So, let's dive into an article that I saw written and published on TVA Sports earlier last week by Felix Seguin. It goes over the Montreal Canadiens and the best rookie on the team right now. Obviously, he needs no introduction. Today we are talking about Lane Hutson and how he was influenced by Duncan Keith. This is a really interesting thought because this article, which will be linked in the description, dives into a bunch of philosophy to the game for Lane Hutson, as well as his admiration for some of the guys that influenced his game the most. And for me, a primary Vancouver Canucks fan, a secondary Montreal Canadiens fan, I saw these ideas and I wanted to make a video commentary just kind of going over why they make so much sense. Oh yeah, this is definitely not anything you couldn't learn just by reading the article yourself, but because I tend to not shut up about things, I wanted to dive into these topics in a video here on YouTube. So, let's dive into this article, written and published by Seguin on December 23rd. Lane Hutson grew up watching the Chicago Blackhawks. That makes sense since Hutson was born in Holland, Michigan, a community that's more than a 2-hour drive from Chicago. Parekh Kane, Duncan Keith, and Jonathan Toews were my favorite players, Hutson told me, Seguin, having lived to the rhythm of the Blackhawks Stanley Cups in 2010, 13, and 15. Now, what I have to always give myself a little bit of a reality check on is the fact that these guys are so young. I was born in 2000, so when the Blackhawks won in 2010, 13, 15, I was, explainably, 10, 13, and 15. Lane Hutson, though, is 4 years younger than I am, so he would have been 6, 9, and 11 when the Chicago Blackhawks won their Stanley Cups. The fact is, Lane Hutson was in his primary childhood days to watch this team make its impact and make all the championships that they did. And thus, seeing Keith, Kane, and Toews as his favorite players, yeah, that's not surprising, the timeline is perfect. Now, this bleeds into some of the other comments that were made by Lane Hutson and written about here in the article. Hutson also admits that he took a lot of inspiration from Duncan Keith to be the defender that he is today. Duncan Keith was always moving and it was impossible for the opponents to hit him solidly. His feet were always moving. It was incredible to watch him go. It's the same with Parekh Kane. Even though he's small, it's hard to take him down. In fact, Hutson says he experienced great emotions last year when he played his first 2 NHL games against Parekh Kane and the Red Wings. Now, this is interesting too. Because when I read the article initially, I was like, oh, having Hutson kind of build and model his game after Duncan Keith, that makes sense. Because Duncan Keith in his prime was one of the most versatile and capable puck-moving defensemen in the NHL. Despite not being the biggest dude, despite not being the most physical dude, Keith was just a motor that got things going for Chicago. He would chug and chug and chug and just not run out of stamina. He would always be in the play. He would always make nice passes, always make nice reads, and defensively he was no slouch either. Duncan Keith was a premier perimeter defenseman, a power play quarterback for the ages in the Chicago Blackhawks organization, and so for Lane Hutson to build his game off of some of the things that made Duncan Keith successful, it makes sense in my mind. But then to add the Parekh Kane-like qualities too, considering the stick handling, the finesse, the absolute elite puck work, the elusiveness, and just how crazy of a hockey IQ that he has, when I think about Lane Hutson, honestly, thinking about the Quinn Hughes comparison, it makes sense, but thinking about Hutson as more of a Duncan Keith plus Parekh Kane makes a lot more sense in my mind. Because obviously, the mold of a defenseman that Lane Hutson is, he falls into that Quinn Hughes, Adam Fox-ish territory. Maybe less of a Cale Makar. I don't think that Hutson is as explosive with his skating and as ambitious to attack the front of the net like Cale is, but with Hughes and Adam Fox more of a perimeter play, that makes a lot of sense to me when comparing Hutson to other guys, but also hearing Duncan Keith's name with a little bit of Patrick Kane tossed in there, that makes even more sense in my mind, and it only works the best that it does when you acknowledge that Hutson grew up as a big fan of these two guys. Like Keith and Kane, Hutson isn't the biggest guy, and it's also become a challenge for his rivals to check him, whether in a minor hockey league or in the NHL. Hutson has always excelled in that aspect of the game. I grew up avoiding contact, I just got used to it. The rest of the article goes out there and talks about Hutson's game here. His size has always been talked about wherever he has been. I asked Hutson how he reacts when people talk about his size. I'm small. It's not like I'm not. I try to make people understand that it doesn't matter if you're big or small on the ice because we all play the same game, Hutson told me convincingly. What's also remarkable about Hutson is that he rarely makes the same mistake twice. You explain it to him once and he understands, Marty St. Louis told me a few weeks ago, so Hutson has this ability to understand and adjust as the season progresses. Besides, Hutson has always been known for finding a way to improve his game. Every summer, I try new things. I have to adjust at each level because players can get used to my tendencies. I always have to find new variations for the upcoming games. I have to be diverse in the way that I play. And this, I think, is a super mature and poised thing for Lane Hutson to go out there and admit that, yeah, I know I'm small. I know I don't have the same physical advantages that some of the other guys in the National Hockey League have. I'm not as big as a Gooley or a Savard or whomever, but we all play the same game. And it's up to me to be able to mold my game around the opponents that I'm playing so that I'm able to navigate and use my skills to the best of my abilities. If guys are going out there and shutting me down and hitting me, then I'm pretty much useless, so there's no reason to linger and stagnate in that sort of a capacity. Lane Hutson is always trying to get better, and like the greats ahead of him, like the guys he models his game after, Kane, Keith, these guys would always find ways to get better. And sure, Duncan Keith eventually fizzled out because he became old and etc, etc. Same you can say happened to Patrick Kane, but there was also a surgery involved there too, so it's a little bit different to judge. But Keith and Kane being primary models of example for what Lane Hutson and his overall dedication, skill set, ceiling maybe, could be, that's a pretty good value pickup for Montreal when you consider where they took Hutson in the 2022 NHL Entry Draft. That was a pretty big steal. Imagine getting Duncan Keith plus Patrick Kane in one player as a power play quarterback, the best quarterback that Patrick Laine has ever played with. Imagine getting that guy in the second round. Link is going to be in the description if you want to go out there and read the article yourself. There's a lot more in there that we didn't discuss and dive into in this video. It's also in French, so I had to translate it to English via the Google machine, which is how we were able to read it here in this video commentary. But for now, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below about Lane Hutson and his development, the way he models his game, or modeled his game after Patrick Kane and Duncan Keith. Whether or not this idea makes sense to you, or whether or not you think it's just kind of baloney. Oh, of course he went out there and talked about the best guys that were on his favorite team when he was a child. It's easy. Are you more of that perspective, or are you more of the perspective that I share where it's like, yeah, no, this actually makes perfect sense. If Hutson developed his game any other way, it wouldn't make as much sense as it does now, because Duncan Keith's power play quarterbacking abilities with the elusiveness and the puck handling of a Patrick Kane, it's kind of exactly what Lane Hutson is in my opinion. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.